don't like girls.
Oh, what do we got? We got love in the air and makeouts. Who's having a good time? Happy New Year, everybody!
Happy 2026, New Year's, a time for fresh beginnings, turning over a new leaf, saying goodbye to the old, hello to the new, and overcrowding your local gym for 2 weeks before giving up and going back to couch surfing and binge watching. Also, did you guys know that apparently the people who line up a day in advance for New Year's Eve in Times Square wear diapers since they can't leave or they'll lose their spot?
You just put it in your underwear.
That's exactly what you do.
And then you switch and you have like bags, like
It stays there.
Ew. Well, anyway, it's a new year with lots of very, very interesting things coming our way, and my resolution this year is to try to make double the amount of videos I made last year. So to start off, before we fully say goodbye to 2025, let's talk about a different loaded diaper that ended over a decade of loud, obnoxious, self-indulgent, forced, emotionally manipulating, tired, and other adjectives of television. That's right, let's kick off 2026 with an episode of
Garbage Day.
Now, before we talk about Season 5 of Stranger Things, I would like to take a little look back on Stranger Things as a whole, where it started and what it became. Stranger Things was one of those weird shows that somehow defied all odds and gained a massive global following. A show about weird sci-fi monsters, nerds, and extreme violence somehow won the hearts of everyone. You know, shows like Midnight Mass exist too, but I haven't heard anyone talk about that show. As many have said before me, the iconography and the characters are the true reasons why this show became so popular so fast. Also, I'm aware that much like Stranger Things itself, I really don't have anything original to say about it positively or negatively, which to me is more about how easily this show is to pick apart and understand rather than my own inability to see things in a different light than anyone else. Anyway, Season 1 of Stranger Things had virtually no marketing push. It just appeared on Netflix back in July of 2016, and maybe we all just needed something to take our minds off the catalyst that was Harambe's death, because within a week of its airing, everyone was talking about it. It caught on like wildfire, and I, along with the rest of the world, instantly fell in love with it. And it's a good thing too, because that first season was actually amazing and not just a dumb fad show everyone was getting into. One part Stephen King, one part H.P. Lovecraft, and a little sprinkle of Steven Spielberg, Season 1 of Stranger Things was a perfect sci-fi horror mystery show. It had enough tension blended with lighthearted moments to create an experience people could not get enough of. What that first season did so well is it didn't give away too much too soon. It starts off with Will's kidnapping, and from there we as an audience have to uncover the truth along with the main characters. We get some glimpses here and there about what actually took him and where he was taken to, but nothing too obvious or outright explanatory. And throughout the plot, we get to meet the main characters that sold this show. The kid actors were charming and lovable in a Stand By Me or It sort of way. Hopper, the depressed alcoholic cop who becomes the hero. Joyce, a hysteric but determined mother desperate to find her son and prove she's not crazy. Steve, the at first stereotypical bully who ends up having more depth than you may originally think. And of course, Barb, the second most dressed as for Halloween character, rivaled only by Harley Quinn in 2016. All of these wonderful, relatable, grounded characters, along with 80s nostalgia, made Stranger Things a household name virtually overnight. And the 80s stuff really worked well in that first season. It wasn't yet to the over-glorification levels that later seasons would do. It was just enough to be charming and add to the story, as the limited technology of the time this is set in kind of acted as a natural roadblock for the mystery itself. A time period like this really works best for a mystery story. A murder mystery set in the 30s is a much different experience for the characters than one set in modern times. And in true horror mystery fashion, it ended with a perfect loose end, allowing us to never really know what could happen next. I love when something ends like this. It lets you use your imagination and decide for yourself what the true ending could be. And yeah, the finale kinda has something like this, but I will get to that later. For all intents and purposes, this was where it was originally supposed to end. Now, I will say, I go back and forth on whether I agree that this show should have ended at season 1. On one hand, I love how self-contained and tightly focused this first season is, and from a storytelling perspective, it works perfectly all on its own. On the other hand, some of my favorite characters and moments come in later seasons despite all the issues that I may have with the rest of the series. So to maybe have a slightly different opinion from the majority, at least the majority I've heard the most from, I'm going to take the side of, I don't mind that the show continued on after season 1. But what it's grown into makes it hard for me to say that.
Look at my ego. You like my ego? I love it!
So, not long after the release and massive success of season 1, Netflix announced the show had been officially greenlit for a second season, which would arrive late in the following year of 2017. And unlike season 1, season 2 now had a hype train to build off of. Stranger Things hype was at an all-time high. Fans couldn't wait to see what would come next for this series. And honestly, Season 2 isn't all that bad. It felt like a standard sequel. We find out that Will is still connected to the Upside Down, Eleven is still alive and being raised in secret by Hopper, and the best character in the whole show is introduced. It wasn't as good as Season 1, but at the time, it was viewed as a decent follow-up, minus one particular episode. In true sequel fashion, the threat is just a bigger version of what they had to face previously, and with the characters now growing off of their past experiences and settling into who they really are, it was a fair season. New characters we grew to love and to hate gave enough for us to latch onto and keep binging. From there, the Stranger Things train kept chugging along, with Season 3 coming out in 2019, and it promised to set up an even bigger situation than previously seen before. So now, may I get into the issues I started to have with this show. Although it wasn't completely evident to me when Season 2 first came out, or even 3 for that matter, the characters and the mystery elements of this show started to drastically shift here. Remember how the characters were the main reason Season 1 did so well and paved the way for the future seasons? Well, there's a huge difference between how an original character is written before anyone knows who they are, and how that same character is written after they become a pop cultural icon. And that, to me, is what really went wrong with this show. Every single one of these characters began to feel like caricatures of themselves, especially in Season 3. The writers seemed to distill them down to their most basic traits based on which interactions and scenes the audience liked the most. And on top of that, the addition of at least 3 to 4 new characters each season, even though, again, some I like, ended up making this show feel very crowded. When everyone in this show is someone's favorite character, well, we gotta try to give equal screen time to everyone. Plus, the characters, including the kids, started to become invincible. There is virtually no threat of death for anyone really, because they were simply too popular to kill off. Kinda reminds me of another show that I got sick and tired of for the same reason. I mean, yeah, sure, they killed off a few new faces here and there, but the plot armor is strong with our main cast. And it started to feel like some of these new characters were only introduced so they could kill someone off without compromising their main cast. And when did everyone, and I mean everyone, become so pissy with each other? Back when Season 4 was coming out, I binge-watched Seasons 1 through 3 in preparation, and watching Season 3 right after Season 2 really opened up my eyes to how literally everyone suddenly shared this same snarky attitude. I mean, yeah, the kids in Season 1 had the 80s style potty mouths, but they weren't spiteful or harsh for the sake of it. I can maybe understand why the kids talk this way to each other by this point because they're becoming moody teenagers, but even the adults do it too. Joyce and Hopper spend most of Season 3 either screaming at each other or screaming at everyone else in the exact same way, and it got old real fast.
Where we kidnapped
Joyce,
you.
please! You give me a headache.
Yeah, take me back there.
To the lab.
Yeah, I want to go back.
Because some magnets fell off your fridge.
Your new boyfriend, right?
Because every man I talk to from now on has to be my boyfriend.
Our kids are in danger.
You said they were at the festival.
Which is like 10 minutes from the gate.
It's been exactly 1 minute, Joyce.
That's 1 minute too long.
What are we doing? Oh, wait, that's right. We're on our way to rescue our children from the big bad 4th of July celebration.
You know what? If you can't handle this, then just turn around and drop me off first.
What are you gonna do? Joyce! Drop!
The other thing I began to notice during this binge watch was how the show truly went from horror mystery to horror action. Back in Season 1, we learned along with the characters what horrors truly lay beneath them in the Upside Down. But now, we already know what these creatures are and what they're capable of. I mean, the cat's out of the bag already, so now our characters are just trying to stuff the cat back in over and over again. There's no more mystery elements to latch onto because we already understand what most of this is. If you find the Russian super lab underneath the mall aspect to be an interesting new mystery, then that's fine, but to me, this is one of the reasons I sometimes lean towards the Stranger Things should have ended at season 1 argument. It's like listening to a new album from your favorite band after they've completely changed their sound. Like, yeah, this is technically Avenged Sevenfold, but it was sure better back in the day. Oh man, I'm turning into one of those people. And I'm not saying that a show can't change or evolve. If you want to follow up the solved mystery with an action plot to stop the monsters once and for all, then give me my relatable characters back. So much of seasons 3 through 5 feels repetitive because everyone has the same attitude towards one another and they say the same things over and over again. And by now, the actual gratuitous 80s nostalgia bait is very much present.
Sweeter, bolder, better.
What I'm saying is, this all could have probably been about 3 seasons worth of a story. And it was season 3 that really made me start to check out of this show. When your clever, suspenseful Lovecraftian horror turns into R.L. Stine, well, you kinda lose me. Seriously, we went from subtly showing glimpses of the monsters to full-on CGI 2-story tall meat monoliths. I might as well just play Resident Evil at this point because that's what this shit has turned into. Wait, why am I not playing Resident Evil right now? Hold on, I'll be back. Oh, come on, Ashley. Why do you have the survival instincts of a wet sock? Anyway, where was I? And me comparing Stranger Things to Resident Evil is not me knocking on Resident Evil. Not at all. But they should not be in the same category. I love Smiling Friends, and I love Frasier, but I don't need these kind of comedies to be similar to one another. Okay. I think I've established why I started not to like Stranger Things anymore, so why don't we just get to what this is really about. So after the events of Season 4, with Hawkins getting ripped apart by Vecna, the mysterious antagonist who's been controlling all the supernatural shenanigans we've seen in this series, we as an audience, well, enough people I guess, eagerly awaited the long-teased, anticipated, epic, $500 million final adventure. Wait, what the fuck? The final season to end all final seasons. With so much marketing, you literally can't escape the show while watching it unless you pay to not have ads on Netflix. Season 5 of Stranger Things promised to end the series once and for all, giving us a balls-to-the-walls, killer-no-filler conclusion to our beloved Strangers of Things. And it was boring as hell. Okay, so real quick, this next chunk is going to only be covering episodes 1 through 7 of season 5. I thought about waiting until New Year's Eve to finish it all and then start writing the script, but holy crap, do I have a lot to say, and I don't think the finale is going to change how I feel all that much. So if the finale was actually life-altering and made up for all this garbage, well, then I'll probably have written a different preface and you wouldn't even be hearing me say this. So if you are hearing all of this, well then spoiler alert, the ending did not make up for all this garbage. This season felt like it was already trying to soft reboot itself. The first episode is literally called The Vanishing of Holly Wheeler. Seriously, after all of this time with the millions of other characters, why is she suddenly so important now? And I know I haven't really talked about season 4, because even the things I did like about season 4 are either overly regurgitated or completely undone in season 5, so what did it even matter? Season 4 ended with Hawkins in ruins, our heroes standing over what will be their final battle. But you're telling me the military just came in and boarded up the mile-long rifts, and no one except the main characters were the wiser? Imagine if Avengers Endgame, for some reason, was a 2-movie finale, with the ending of Part 1 being Steve Rogers standing against Thanos and his army right before the portals open as the last shot. But then when Part 2 comes out, Thanos has apparently just gone back to space to regroup, and the Avengers have to come up with a new plan to end him. Yeah, that wouldn't have made much sense. But that's what happens here, from season 4 to season 5. Also, how does nobody else in this town not know that something is going on? Like, it's been how many years of this insanity? Half the town was mind-controlled in season 3, and yet the majority of these morons still don't believe that something odd is going on around them? So yeah, even though I liked Eddie, his sacrifice really didn't matter all that much, did it? The only real carryover is Max is in a coma. And if you thought season 4 made running up that hill into an overplayed meme, Well, get used to it, because you're going to hear a lot more of it. See what I mean? How this feels like it's already a nostalgia bait reboot of itself? Oh man, I haven't even started talking about the story yet. I'm going to be here all day. Okay, so cliff notes. Holly and a bunch of other kids get snatched by Vecna, pretending to be their imaginary friend so that he could use them as vessels to exact his will on the world. Max, while in a coma, is actually trapped in Henry's mind and helps Holly to escape. Meanwhile, the rest of the cast have been doing what they call crawls to find a way back inside the Upside Down and kill Vecna before he can exact whatever his master plan may be. Dustin is sad about Eddie's death, Jonathan and Nancy are hitting the skids, Steve is back to just being kind of an asshole, Mike and Eleven barely have any connection anymore, Will comes out of the closet to everybody, and Joyce, Hopper, Lucas, and Murray are also here. This whole season was just long-winded conversations in the most unrealistic scenarios. And most of what is said between the characters is either shit we already knew, things we can't believe took this long for them to even say out loud, or annoying, corny-ass arguments ending in one character figuring out what to do next because of a mundane line of dialogue spoken by a different character, and then using physical objects to visualize and simplify their plan, while others finally catch on to what they're talking about and finish each other's sentences. This happens like every 30 minutes. This is filler, people. So much of this could have been condensed down to like maybe 3 episodes max. Because there are actually some cool new concepts being introduced here. I love the character of Vecna, and the revelation that the Upside Down is actually just a wormhole to a completely different world is really interesting. But again, the majority here are long, overly dramatic, unimportant character interactions. Like the scene where Jonathan and Nancy break up. The room is filling with goo, and yet they have time to spend 10 minutes saying as many words as possible to convey a couple sentences worth of information. You're not Quentin Tarantino because you had 2 characters say a lot of words. If the conversation doesn't feel natural, it ain't gonna work, and I'm gonna fast forward. Like I said, the idea of the Upside Down being a wormhole to the real other dimension, the Abyss, is actually really interesting. It turns what we thought about the Upside Down, well, upside down. Damn it. Vecna's mysterious memory cave, Will unlocking his sorcerer powers by tapping into the hive mind, and that his nightmares have been what's caused the tunnels underneath Hawkins. That's cool. That's interesting. I'd like to explore more of that, please. Oh, sorry guys, we gotta spend another 15 minutes with Hopper telling Eleven why he can't lose her and how full of regret he is for the millionth time. Oh, for the love of God. None of this is grounded anymore. And just because it's a sci-fi, supernatural, action, thriller, whatever, doesn't mean you can't have your characters grounded in reality. I would argue that you should have your characters grounded so that we as an audience can better relate to them during these insane scenarios. But so much time is spent on every single one of these characters having the same conversations with each other. There are also just so many characters at this point. And even with the amount of time spent on conversations between them, half of them feel like they have nothing to contribute anymore. The focus of this narrative clearly wants to be about Will, Max, Eleven, and Holly, with Henry serving as the villain. But we can't have Stranger Things without all our beloved characters, so we gotta make sure everyone has equal screen time. The first 4 episodes are just a lead up to Will unlocking his powers, and then the next 3 are a build up for Will to come out as gay to the rest of the cast so he can finally have the clarity and acceptance to help fight Vecna, I guess. Seriously, I can't even remember what happened in episodes 5 through 7 because nothing mattered. This was all clearly just a lead up to the final episode. And I'm not touching this scene, by the way. If you've seen it, you already know. And by this point, this scene is really just more of the same crap that's been in the last 6 episodes, so the subject matter really doesn't make this any different to me. This was an extremely bloated, self-indulgent, unimaginative 7+ hours of television, and I cannot believe that the finale will make me feel any different about it. Okay, so now episode 8 is out, and the show is finally over. And since you heard my preface earlier, you already know that I'm going to say that I was right and that it did not make up for or change my mind on the rest of this season. But I will say that the ending wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. It was at least more tolerable than the last 7 episodes, but dear God, we did not need all that lead up for this ending. And that does not mean that this ending's amazing. It shares a lot of the same issues I have stated with the rest of season 5. And it's clear that this is the episode where most of that $500 million budget went, because that final battle was pretty cinematic, for whatever it's worth. Also, this was not as bad as the Game of Thrones ending. I know a lot of people were saying that, but while this was mid, it wasn't nearly as insulting as Game of Thrones. So, what did I like about the ending? I said the CGI budget was clearly used here and didn't look awful. I liked how emotional of a performance Millie Bobby Brown was giving, despite most of her co-stars looking like they couldn't care less anymore. I love Jamie Campbell Bower as Henry. Yeah, that's about it. So many of my pet peeves are in this finale, as they have been in the rest of Season 5. Long drawn-out conversations between two or more characters while death and destruction rain down, obvious twists, invincible characters, so many corny one-liners. Seriously, enough with the one-liners. I only want to hear Leon Kennedy making jokes this bad.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
But probably my biggest pet peeve, showing flashbacks during an emotional moment to try to add more weight to the scene. Yeah, I've seen the show, guys. Have you ever heard about less being more? The amount of times the characters have close calls only to be saved at the last second is insane. The fact that Vecna is so easily ambushed despite having looked into Hopper and Eleven's mind is just so stupid. They just show up to the Abyss, no problem, and I guess they spent the last of their budget on the Mind Flayer because there are no Demogorgons or any other monsters here at all. Where the hell did they go? Also, Vecna's conclusion, it seemed weak to me. After all this genuine intrigue to his character and the revelation that the memory he's been hiding from was that the Mind Flayer's been using him as a puppet all along, it felt like he needed one last moment of closure for me. But no, Eleven just shows up, impales him on a spike, and Joyce cuts his head off, reducing him to a video game boss. You know, I was wondering what the hell Joyce was even doing here during the final battle, but once I saw that she had an axe in her hand, I thought, wait, she's gonna say something cliche and be the one to actually kill him, isn't she? Oh my god, enough with the flashbacks. Also, the music choice for El's sacrifice is truly hysterical to me. Maybe I'm a product of brain rot doom scrolling, but hearing a song like Purple Rain while everyone screams in slow motion it made me laugh out loud. It felt like someone else's Instagram edit of this scene. And the way the military just apparently let everyone go after Eleven dies and the portal closes. Like, these guys were already such a weak antagonistic force, and them just skipping ahead after this to show a longer epilogue than Return of the King was laughable. These characters having the ability to take on an enemy of this scale with no real training is crazy. I mean, sure, there are underdog stories, but I just can't believe that Nancy Wheeler could hold her own against the Mind Flayer long enough for the rest of the party to start attacking the creature's hit points, like a Resident Evil boss. And the moments that should have been emotional closures were ruined by actors just not caring anymore. I mean, come on, Finn Wolfhard, we're almost done. You can do it, buddy. The kids graduating and finally getting the invite to the cool kids after party is not what any of this has been about for so long that it feels out of place. I really, really want to like that last scene of them playing D&D together one more time, and then Holly and her new friends taking the reins. But this doesn't have the weight I think they were hoping for. They clearly wanted a Toy Story 3 ending here, I guess, but it just doesn't feel right. Okay, real quick, in contrast, but not really, to Stranger Things, HBO released the first season of It Welcome to Derry in October last year. The series from the author that Stranger Things took so much inspiration from came out with a new show that took heavy inspiration from Stranger Things. What a weird paradox, huh? The similarities between these two shows is obvious, with some standouts being like the military in both want to contain the evil entities to fight the Soviets. The town as a whole doesn't believe anything weird is actually going on. Invincible characters teaming up with each other to fight another worldly being, and both of those beings are sometimes giant space spiders. But apart from the similarities, I think It Welcome to Derry is a much better season of a supernatural horror show than Stranger Things has been in many years. Without getting too much into it, Welcome to Derry is actually quite good. It starts off with a genuine twist that drives the rest of the plot forward for the main kids. It balances the emotional elements and drama between the characters with believable real-life stakes and circumstances, leaving them to decide what to do and who to trust. And Welcome to Derry also utilizes flashbacks, but not to the extent of Stranger Things, where we're just being reminded of previous seasons for extra emotional weight. No, flashbacks to better establish the adult characters and their stake in the story. But probably my favorite thing that Welcome to Derry does is it doesn't just show the Deadlights as Pennywise the Clown. Obviously, Pennywise is the most popular form that it takes, but that's not all it is. And even though Pennywise was all over the marketing, he himself doesn't really appear fully until over halfway through. Instead, we see a more unique and creative approach taken at first, where each individual kid sees a manifestation of their own deepest fears causing them to freak out, and in the case of one of them, getting sent to an asylum for being crazy. Once Pennywise does appear, it is pretty much just him from then on out, and yeah, I kind of wish they had stuck more with the other manifestations, but they at least show more into the backstory of the real-life Pennywise who the Deadlights decided to emulate, even giving us the daughter of the circus performer who thinks that this creature may still be her father, and that she's gone crazy with obsession over all these years. The writing of the show just feels a bit more like it comes from a place of wanting to tell a compelling story rather than just checking boxes of what Netflix and the Duffer Brothers think the audience wants to see. Welcome to Derry feels more like what I would have wanted Stranger Things to have become, which again is weird considering Stranger Things was inspired by Stephen King and It, and now It, Welcome to Derry, feels inspired by Stranger Things. And again, Welcome to Derry is not perfect. It also shares many of the pet peeves I mentioned earlier, but the story is just more engaging to me. The characters feel more real and react more appropriately to the situations, both supernatural and circumstantial, based on the time period the show takes place in. See, you can have a show that accurately depicts how social bias and prejudice was, while using those situations to shape a compelling horror mystery. You don't need to virtue signal your current feelings onto us through your characters in a way that has truly nothing to do with what's going on in the plot. But that's enough about Welcome to Derry. I would recommend it over the last season of Stranger Things. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't address the argument that this show does in fact attempt to have that open-ended ending that I've been harping about. During the final scene, Mike tells the party about Eleven and Collie's master plan to trick everyone into thinking Eleven died, that she's actually still alive somewhere, and it was all a ruse to convince the military she was dead so they'd leave them all alone. It's just a theory that they choose to believe, so hey, it's a loose thread of mystery, right? I don't know. It doesn't really matter if she is or isn't. It's not the same as Will throwing up a slug monster alluding to the evil still lingering and something could happen again. Plus, they already did this with Eleven's character at the end of season 1 too. Yeah, that's right. It's not just Will who leaves a loose thread at the end of that season. I didn't forget. To me, this is just an emotionally cheap way to not fully commit to the death of a main character because they're afraid too many people would be angry if they just said she was dead outright. Because seriously, audiences these days cannot let anyone stay dead. And with Mike leaving the basement for his sister and her friends to take the reins of their old D&D campaigns, now this feels like a passing of the torch and the actual open-ended ending, leaving the door open for a spinoff. And if you're someone who is fine with this kind of thing, and you cried butterfly tears, and you feel like I'm pessimistically shitting over your good time, then I am truly sorry. Lord knows I myself love a lot of movies and shows that align perfectly with the problems I have just talked about. Maybe I'm just bitter because I love season 1 so much, and knowing that all of this is what comes after makes it a little harder to go back and watch it. Stranger Things season 5 wasn't great. It was extremely self-indulgent and bloated. When writers start listening too much to the audience, the art always suffers. Adding lines of dialogue where the writers try to self-awarely insert the critics is not a clever way to excuse this kind of writing. The cultural phenomenon that was Stranger Things could have ended in a more satisfying way years ago. But popularity will run something ragged after too long. So Happy New Year, everyone. Time to close the book for good on this and look towards the future for when the spin-off eventually comes out. Oh, God damn!